All right, my friends, I hope you're ready to get a little uncomfortable right now because I might ruffle some feathers as I talk about these bad habits in backpacking that need to just go out the door in 2025. These are things that I feel like can ultimately help anybody in the backpacking space that enjoys backpacking and hiking and such to just have a more enjoyable experience. That is always my goal on the channel here, is to help you have a better experience in the backcountry. Bad habit number one is not planning trips far enough in advance or planning trips in enough detail. And when you get out on those trips and such, maybe you don't have as good of an experience because it wasn't planned out super well, or something happens like an injury or an accident or whatever, and it completely derails the opportunity for things to just be an enjoyable time out on the trip, regardless of that situation happening. So I feel like so many of us can have much more enjoyable backpacking trips and experiences overall if we just plan things a bit more in detail and more in advance, so that we're securing permits for places that might be bucket list opportunities or places that we want to go visit, and because you were like complacent in or lazy in not planning that trip far enough in advance, you didn't get the permit that you wanted and you didn't get to go on that cool trip or whatever. The idea is just think of all of the things that you want to do, those bucket list types of trips, where you want to go, what kind of places you want to see, what kind of new experiences you want to have, and really plan those far in advance so that you are totally ready to go. But also get really detailed with your planning. That is one of my favorite parts of a backpacking trip, is really sinking into the research of an area, what I want to see, what there is to see, and try to find as much information as possible. Part of that is through researching blogs and forums and even Facebook groups, but then also spending a lot of time looking at maps in the topography of the area, what kind of features and things there might be available for me to see, so that I have all of that available at hand and it's not a surprise and I end up like later down the road thinking like, oh my gosh, I was in this really cool place and there was this thing that I could have seen that I had no idea that was there because I didn't plan the trip in enough detail. Like, spend a considerable amount of time in maps. My personal favorite is OUTERWEAR Backcountry. I have so many waypoints and like little notes and details and things in so many different places in the trip planning that I do, that it's now this like library of like huge resource for me with my trip planning. And I love that. I love that I have that available to me now. And when I'm out on my trip, I have all that information on those offline maps and such that make it a way more enjoyable experience, because I can navigate to things, I can look for things that I've marked and I'm like, yes, I cannot wait to go and see that. Or it just helps me be more successful in my trip overall. So plan better trips, plan more detailed trips, but then also, just as a quick little side note, still allow yourself time for like spontaneous trips on the weekends. And what I mean by that is like maybe go through the process of looking at some areas that are closer to home that you could plan some time around, or just like some loops or simple trips that when you feel like, oh, I can get out this weekend and I wasn't really planning to do so, you've got that in your back pocket so that you just have something available for you to go out on like an impromptu or spontaneous trip, to go and spend more time outside and just have all of that as like a fail-safe, or just like I said, in your back pocket, so that you can go have those spontaneous adventures and do it in a way that still provides some safety from like risk management and backup plans and contingency plans or whatever. Just plan stuff, plan your trips, and do it in detail. Now, bad habit number two is just still being too focused on the weight of your gear and not allowing yourself to just go outside and have a good time in the backcountry. Like, it really does not matter what gear you use, but what does matter is what your personal goals are and what your style of backpacking is. Yes, I will advocate for saving weight in your backpacking system, and reducing the amount of gear that you carry with you. That will absolutely aid in having a better experience. Carrying less weight on your back is important, but I think there is a point where it becomes too much, where you are too focused on weight and you're potentially missing out on some really cool pieces of gear that if you just accepted the fact that maybe this piece of gear is half a pound more or a pound more, that it could actually provide a better experience for the type of backpacker that you are, and not necessarily always thinking like, I have to have the absolute lightest weight piece of gear possible. And it's funny, like here on YouTube, I obviously share a lot of different pieces of gear, and a very common comment that I see on various videos is, well, that piece of gear is too heavy for backpacking. I would never use that for backpacking because it's too heavy, which is such an interesting comment for me to see when that piece of gear is absolutely a great piece of gear for backpacking. But there's just this idea of like, nope, it has to be the lightest weight thing possible. And because it's not the lightest weight, that makes it not a good piece of gear for backpacking. That's just not simply true. Everybody's gonna have different priorities. Everybody's gonna have different reasons for going out there. Like, for example, somebody through hiking is absolutely gonna wanna carry a 2 pound or less tent in their backpack versus a 4 pound tent. But that doesn't mean that that 4 pound tent isn't a good backpacking tent option for somebody that goes out 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times a year, and it provides the experience that they want out of that design. So weight can't be the end all be all for everything backpacking. And I think we need to just open our minds a little bit more to accepting the fact that some great pieces of gear are going to weigh more than some other options out there. And you could also find that you're spending less money and not having such a hit on your bank account because you are willing to carry 1 or 2 pounds more in your backpack than if you went with something different. So let's just stop worrying so much about the overall weight of things, but still refine your system, refine your gear, and reduce the amount of gear that you bring with you so that you aren't carrying a bunch of unnecessary weight. Carry what makes sense for you and just go out there and have a good experience because of it. Now, bad habit number 3 is just simply backpacking in the same places year after year and not pushing yourself to go explore and experience new locations that would push yourself from a mental standpoint and also like new skill sets to go enjoy and experience new environments. I think that that is such a key part of what backpacking is. You have everything on your back to get deep into a location and to go experience what that location provides. And if you're just backpacking in the same place year after year, eventually you're going to become bored with it and you're not going to get the fulfillment out of what backpacking I feel like is for a lot of people. And so a good example of this is here in Utah, we have the Uinta mountain range that is a beautiful, phenomenal place to backpack. But at this point, I've become pretty bored of the Uintas. Now there's still a lot of the range for me to explore and experience and things to see and such, but for the most part, like it's so close to home. I spend so much time there that I know what kind of experience I'm going to have when I plan just like a typical backpacking trip in the Uintas. And so at this point, I'm looking for other ways to kind of spice it up. And last year was a good example of going on a pretty aggressive like off-trail route over these high elevation passes and connecting bases and such. And that was super fun. But then also taking my kids out and letting them experience new things and kind of living through their lens in that way instead of like it always being about me. So I'm even now at the point looking for where can I go that's like still close to home, but would be a totally different experience and a new opportunity and new memory and such that I would not be familiar with. So I'm looking at like Nevada and Wyoming and even like northern Arizona and such to go and spend some time in so that I am not just always doing the same thing over and over again and just kind of getting bored with what that would be. So long story short, if you want to piggyback on the idea of just planning trips more in advance, like start planning trips that are out of state or completely new locations and do all of the research necessary to go have those really cool experiences in new places. I guarantee that it will just up your excitement level for getting out there and adventuring and being in new environments. It will make better memories, really cool stories, and you will enjoy backpacking more if you push yourself to go experience new places. Now, the fourth and final bad habit to talk about today is just the simple fact of stop caring about how other people backpack, how other people choose to spend their time outside, especially if it is different from how you approach your backpacking. We all come from different education levels. We all come from different experiences and lifestyles, and our journey of where we're at in our backpacking is going to be different for everybody. And to sit there and care about how somebody is doing it different than you doesn't do any good. Now, I do genuinely feel like there is not a huge problem of this and it has to be addressed in this way to like totally fix it. But I do see fairly often when people are sharing their backpacking trips on YouTube, for example, and in the comments, you get people that are just typing away saying, you're doing it wrong, you should do this differently, you should have this different piece of gear. And it just becomes this like, that's not helpful. Like, let's encourage people to have an experience that wants them to go and spend more time outside and not hinder their desire to spend time outside because somebody decided to say, you're doing it wrong. Now, there are things that we should not be doing in the backcountry that we can help people get educated on if they are not educated. An example would be that we could help people get educated on is if you build a fire and you leave it just smoldering and you walk away from the campsite, and that opens an opportunity for a wildfire to take place. We can delicately and in a proper educational way help somebody realize that, hey, next time you do that, could you consider doing this so that this kind of thing doesn't take place, and not make it like a judgment zone and telling people like you're doing it wrong because it's different from you. Now, I know that might sound a little bit harsh and a little bit bold to say, but I think it is an important discussion to have because so many more people now are spending time outside, and it's going to be different from how you choose to do it. And that is totally fine. And we just don't need to worry so much about how somebody chooses to spend their time outside if it's different from how we are. Let me know what you guys think about these bad habits down in the comments section. Let's have a conversation about it, and any other bad habits that you think we could throw out the door in 2025 to help us have a better experience out on our backpacking trips. I want to thank you guys for watching today. If you're not subscribed, you know what to do. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.